Okay, so have you ever felt like totally swamped by like a giant goal? You know what I mean? Like it makes you just want to like give up before you even start.
I think we've all been there, right? We get so focused on that, like, big final thing we want to achieve that we forget about all the little steps along the way.
Right. And that's what we're diving into today, this whole idea of small wins. And we've got some really interesting stuff to talk about. Like we've got James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
Oh, yeah, Clue's book is amazing. He talks about this idea of just getting 1% better every day, which doesn't sound like much, but over time,
It really adds up.
it totally does. He says, like, if you can improve by just 1% each day, a year from now, you'll be 37 times better.
37 times.
Ah.
Okay, I'm listening. So what exactly are we talking about when we say small wins?
Well, there's this psychologist, Carl Weick, and he defines them as like a concrete, complete outcome of moderate importance.
Hmm. Okay, I'm not sure I totally get it.
It sounds kind of boring when you put it like that, I know. But basically, it's these like little achievements, things you do that maybe don't seem like a big deal on their own, but they all add up to something bigger.
Okay, so like finishing a task on your to-do list or
Yeah.
like finally going to the gym like you said you would.
Exactly. Or even just like starting that book you've been meaning to read. All of those are small wins. And what's cool is how they affect us, like psychologically.
Oh, you mean like they make us feel good?
Yeah. They give us a sense of progress and boost our confidence, which makes us more likely to keep going towards our goals. It's like building a house, brick by brick.
So we need those small wins to kind of keep us motivated and on track.
Totally. Think about it this way. Each time you experience a small win, your brain releases dopamine.
Dopamine, like the happy chemical.
Exactly. And dopamine isn't just about feeling good, it also plays a role in habit formation and motivation.
So you're saying like small wins can actually train our brains to want to achieve more.
It's like rewiring your brain for success, one small win at a time.
So it's kind of like I don't know, like laying down tracks for a train. The more you use those tracks, the smoother the ride gets.
That's a great way to put it. And this ties back to what James Clear talks about in his book, about building systems for success. It's not about just willpower, it's about creating habits that make it easier to reach your goals.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to do things we don't want to do. It's about like setting ourselves up for success.
Exactly.
It's funny because we always hear about like setting these big, ambitious goals. But sometimes those goals can feel so big that they like scare us into doing nothing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It can be totally paralyzing. And that's actually where small wins become super powerful. They help us break down those huge goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
So instead of trying to climb Mount Everest all at once, we're like setting up base camps along the way.
Exactly. And each base camp gives you a chance to celebrate how far you've come, catch your breath, and get ready to tackle the next stage.
This is all making so much sense. But how do we actually make this happen? Like, where do we even begin?
Well, there are some specific strategies we can use to like really harness the power of small wins. And we'll talk about those right after.
Hold on. You're not going to leave us hanging, are you? Tell us
Yeah.
the strategies.
All right. No cliffhangers, I promise. Let's dive into those strategies right now.
Okay, good. Because I'm ready to start putting this all into practice.
Yeah.
So no breaks, no cliffhangers. You're speaking my language. Okay, let's talk about these strategies. How can we actually use small wins in our own lives?
Well, I think the first thing is to break down those big, scary goals, Make them into smaller, more manageable chunks. It's like creating a roadmap.
Ooh, I like that. So instead of just focusing on the final destination, we're mapping out those rest stops along the way.
Right. So each of those little milestones becomes its own mini goal. It's something you can actually celebrate, something to keep you motivated.
Okay, I can see how that would help. But I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle with consistency. Like, we start out strong, but then life happens and we kind of lose steam. How do we stay on track?
That's where tracking comes in. It may seem kind of simple, maybe even old school, but it's super powerful.
So like keeping a journal.
Yeah.
Or using one of those habit tracking apps.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that helps you visualize your progress, the key is to have something you can look back on, especially when you hit those inevitable bumps in the road.
Because let's be real, there are always going to be bumps. Life is messy.
Totally. So having that visual reminder of how far you've come can really make a difference. It's like giving yourself a pep talk, but with proof.
I'm sold on the tracking idea. What's the third strategy?
Okay, this one might sound a bit counterintuitive, especially since we've been talking about big goals, but it's all about starting small, like really small.
Wait, how small are we talking?
Pick one new habit you want to build, but make it something so easy, so ridiculously manageable that you can do it every day without feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, so instead of trying to change my whole life overnight, I pick one tiny thing and focus on that.
Exactly. So let's say your goal is to write a novel. Instead of pressuring yourself to write pages every day, what if you committed to just writing one sentence?
Just one sentence. That almost seems too easy.
I know, right? It might feel silly at first. But it's not about the amount you do, it's about the consistency. By showing up every day, even if it's just for one sentence, you're building the habit.
And then that one sentence turns into two, and then a paragraph, and before you know it, you've got a whole chapter.
Exactly. Small wins build on each other. Think about that 1% improvement we talked about earlier. It all adds up.
Okay, I'm getting it now. So the three big takeaways are break down your goals, track your progress, and start small.
You got it. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to have days where you slip up, you miss a day, and that's totally fine.
It's more about the long game, right? Not about being perfect every single day.
Exactly. It's about progress, not perfection. Be kind to yourself, adjust when you need to, and just keep moving forward, one small win at a time.
You know what I'm really liking about this whole idea of small wins is how it changes the way we think about success.
You're right. We're so used to thinking about success as these big, splashy achievements. But in reality, real success is built on these small, consistent efforts, the small wins that we pile up over time.
It's like finding the joy in the journey, celebrating those little victories along the way.
And it's about changing our mindset from feeling overwhelmed to feeling empowered. When we start to appreciate those small wins, we realize we can do way more than we thought we could.
This is blowing my mind. I mean, this small wins thing seems like it could apply to pretty much anything, right?
I think so. The principles are the same no matter what you're trying to achieve. And the most important thing is remembering to celebrate every win, no matter how small.
This has been such a great conversation. I'm feeling super inspired to start using these strategies.
Me too. And I bet our listener is feeling inspired too. And I know they provided some great stuff for us to talk about today, so I'm excited to connect these ideas back to their specific interests. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final question to think about.
Oh, love a good question. What is it?
Well, we've talked a lot about how powerful small wins can be, how they can help us achieve our goals and build confidence.
And we've covered some practical ways to use small wins in our everyday lives.
Right. So my question for you, dear listener, is what's one small step you can take today to move towards a goal that's important to you? It doesn't have to be anything big or crazy. Remember, it's about those small, consistent actions that really make a difference over time.
That's such a good question. And I think it's the perfect way to end this deep dive. It's a call to action, like let's stop just talking about this stuff and actually start doing it.
Exactly. I encourage you to take some time to really think about that question. Because even the tiniest action, if you do it consistently, can create incredible change. Remember that article you shared about wanting to learn a new language? Imagine breaking that down into small steps, like learning one new word each day.
Or that goal of getting back in shape. What if you started by just taking a 10-minute walk every day?
Exactly. It's all about those small, achievable actions that build momentum and give you the confidence to keep going.
This has been so insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today and for taking us on this deep dive into the power of small wins.
My pleasure. It's always a joy to talk with someone who's so passionate about learning.
Well, I have to admit, I'm a bit of a small wins enthusiast myself. I really do get a lot of satisfaction from those little victories along the way.
I totally get it. And I think that's a great point to end on. The power of small wins isn't just about reaching the finish line. It's about enjoying the whole journey. It's about those small steps forward and recognizing that you can achieve amazing things one small win at a time.
You know, it's funny, as we're talking about all of this, I keep thinking back to those sources you shared, especially that article about topic. It was a lot to take in, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a lot of dense information in there, but I think that's what makes this small wins idea so cool. It can help us with even the really complicated stuff.
That's true. I remember that part in the article about specific challenge from the article. That felt kind of impossible.
Right. But what if we think about it in terms of small wins? Like, what's one tiny thing you could do today to start making progress? Even if it's just researching one little piece of it or brainstorming a few ideas.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like taking this giant tangled mess and finding that one loose end you can pull to start unraveling it all.
Exactly. And as you keep pulling on those threads, making a little bit of progress each day, it actually becomes easier to deal with the bigger problem.
This is making me realize that sometimes the biggest thing holding us back from our goals is like our own thinking. You
Hmm.
know, we get so focused on how big the task is that we forget about those small steps we can take.
That happens all the time.
Hmm.
But when we switch from feeling overwhelmed to focusing on those small wins, it opens up so much more possibility and motivation.
Well, this deep dive has been amazing. I think you, dear listener, are leaving here today with some really useful tools and a whole new way of thinking about how to reach your goals, no matter how big or small they might be.
And remember, you have the power to make incredible changes in your life, one small win at a time. So don't be afraid to go out there, celebrate those little victories, and never forget the power of those tiny steps forward.
This has been The Deep Dive, and we'll catch you on the next one.